Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are exploring something absolutely fascinating from Code 550.2. We're going to focus strictly on chapters 6 through 10 of the source material. As you'll see, we're looking at this beautifully grounded, serene world populated by these contemporary 20-somethings to uncover some deeply hidden spiritual mechanics. It's not just a coming-of-age story, right? We're actually looking at an unseen spiritual invasion trying to literally overwrite the soul. And, more importantly, we'll be looking at the counter strategies we can all use to fight back. Okay, let's dive into this. You know how we often tell ourselves that a small compromise, just a tiny indulgence in something we know kinda isn't right, is totally harmless? Like, hey, a little naughtiness never hurt anyone, right? Well, what happens when that is just ignored over and over? The source material reveals how these small, seemingly harmless negative choices secretly accumulate over time. It's this massive, unseen drain on our personal energy. Which brings us to Section 1, Debt of Misused Energy. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. When characters like Abby and Evan start recognizing this unseen drain, Lord Blue uses this powerful financial metaphor. People often say, oh, it's just $5, or in real life, it's just a few small lies, a little bit of hate, no big deal. But just like compound interest, that debt skyrockets. Every single time you make that choice, your positive potential gets converted into what the text literally calls a packet of naughtiness. Yeah, so this accumulation actually has a name in Chapter 6, the naughty blob. I know, it sounds a bit funny, but the concept is super heavy. This negative energy doesn't just, magically reset when you wake up the next day. It clumps together. It forms this heavy conglomerate that actually traps your good potential and drags your spirit down. And that debt, it stays right there until you do the work to pay it back by transforming that energy back into positive light. Moving on to Section 2, the gamified trap. Now, what's really interesting about this strategy is how these unseen adversaries actually convince people to keep accumulating all this debt. They deploy a highly calculated tactic. They secretly redefine the whole goal of life as mere pleasure. They disguise harmful choices as quote-unquote self-care to convince you that life is just a consequence-free game. I mean, if nothing matters permanently, why not just indulge? It's a calculated move totally designed to drain your spiritual credits. We see this exact tactic target Abby during a serene evening gathering. She's tempted to twist a story about someone she envies, just to gain a little bit of social clout. It's that subtle backdoor voice whispering, hey, you've been nice, you totally deserve this, right before pushing her into a choice that leaks her spiritual light for a temporary naughty magnet thrill. You trade your long-term strength for a cheap win. That leads us into Section 3, escaping the identity sphere. So the crucial point here is what happens in the aftermath of those choices in Chapter 8. The sphere of identity is totally natural, right? It lets you be an individual. But it becomes an absolute trap when heavy emotions like fear, shame, and grief slam those mental doors shut. When those doors get locked by pride, you are kept docked in this flat, tightly controlled harbor, completely blocked off from the broader, expansive awareness of the cosmos. Just look at the contrast between these two states of being. On one hand, you have the prideful fool protocol. This is embodied by characters like Rev, who adopt this locked-in, algorithmic mindset, literally believing their tiny little network is the entire internet. But compare that to spiritual expansion. That is the natural state of a Crystic Conscience, a soul that seeks genuine connection and naturally generates deep gratitude as it pushes way past those fake boundaries. Next up, Section 4, Strategies for Survival. So, once you realize you're stuck in a locked room, how do you actually fight back? In Chapter 9, we see Diesel's major realization. The unseen tempters desperately want us distracted. So they hand us these substitute villains. Think politicians, billionaires, the outward chaos. They keep us staring at the movie screen. But the actual adversaries, the real source of the spiritual drain, they stay completely hidden back in the projector room, quietly manipulating our focus so we never even think to look their way. So what are the actionable steps to survive this? Lord Blue outlines a clear counter-strategy. First, seek friends in high places. You absolutely cannot fight a spiritual battle alone. Second, research your enemy's tactics so you aren't fighting blind. And third, anticipate attacks during your weak moods. The tempters generally avoid you in the morning when your spirit is sharp and rested. No, they hit late at night when you're exhausted and just want to zone out. Running is only temporary, so you must actively know both yourself and your enemy. The source material makes such a profound point here. They want you staring at the movie screen of outrage. And honestly, regardless of where you look in society or politics, constant outward conflict is often a manufactured distraction. Chaos is not freedom. It is merely a mechanism to burn through your spiritual reserves and hide the real, unseen extraction of your energy going on behind the scenes. Let's see how this builds into our final area. Section 5. The Unresolved Protocol. This is the absolute secret the adversaries do not want you to know. The subnatural mechanics of this conflict mean that resisting temptation directly drains their energy. They literally hate resistance because it burns through their own operational reserves. If a soul consistently pushes back and maintains its harmony, the tempter actually weakens and eventually just has to back off. We get to see Abby and Evan implement these exact strategies right in their modern, contemporary lives through what the text calls grounded resistance. Abby starts limiting her screen time so it doesn't dictate her identity. Evan learns to see right through the chaotic, chemical soup of teenage romance. Most importantly, they actively step away from the noise of the dataist world to protect their true soul thoughts from those projected algorithmic lies. But the stakes remain incredibly high. Abby asks this absolutely crucial question: what happens if we fail? If we just ignore this unseen spiritual battle, the harmful consequences aren't just a temporary glitch. They actively slow your progress, they severely limit your potential, and they trap your good energy, preventing you from ever graduating to higher levels of awareness. Because the hard truth is, the invasion never truly ends. This is the unresolved protocol. Even if you master your resistance and the tempters back off, they simply wait in the firmware. They wait for your absolute weakest moments of profound grief, deep betrayal, and tragedy, just waiting for a chance to knock on the door and try to overwrite your soul all over again. It's an ongoing daily choice for all of us. The conflict between the algorithmic systems around us and our own inner conscience remains completely unresolved. So let me leave you with this. Between a glowing screen promising easy distraction and the quiet inner voice of your true potential, which signal will you follow next?